Welcome to the FedLife Podcast with Dan Sipe from Serving Those Who Serve. In this podcast, Dan draws from years of financial experience to help federal employees overcome challenges that every Fed can relate to. Join us for this journey as we reach, teach, and serve to help you make the right financial decisions. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the FedLife Podcast. I am your host, Dan Sipe, and additionally, I'm the branch manager here at Serving Those Who Serve in Lee, Sipe, and Associates. I always like to begin with thanking you for taking time to listen, and above all, thank you for your service. I say it again and again, you just don't hear it enough, and you're always going to hear it here. We are back again with the incomparable, the amazing, the guru, Easy Ed Zurndorfer, as part of our ongoing mission to reach, teach, and serve you. And I'm actually pretty excited about this one. I'm excited about all of them, but a little bit more today, because Ed's going to be walking us through the Roth option in TSP. And if you're a listener, you realize I was a bonehead in my previous episode, and I actually got the date wrong for when Roth TSP came in. I'm humbled, but I'm always humbled at Ed's presence. So he always keeps me straight on that. And so I think this is going to be important. And if you're listening while driving or working, have no fear. You don't need a pen right now, because Ed's article on this topic can be found at the Fed Zone at the SWS website, and that is blog.stwserve.com. So, Ed, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
Ed, I know from our experience working with Feds here at Serving Those Who Serve, boy, I'll tell you, the Roth option has to be one of the most misunderstood benefits in federal service, and it's really awesome.
Yes.
So I got a chuckle here, because the article you wrote for us in FedZone, which again is awesome, and you can find that again at blog.stwserve.com, is entitled, "Is the Roth TSP an appropriate choice for all federal employees?" Well, speaking as a planner, I say trick question. And I hope my compliance department hears me say that, because nothing's right for all people. But I have to add, in this case, that the opinions of Ed Zurndorfer, no matter how awesome, are not necessarily the opinions of Serving Those Who Serve and Raymond James. This podcast is for information only, should not be taken as advice. Listeners should consult their advisors before making any decisions. So back to Ed. Okay. For starters, Roth TSP and Roth IRA are not identical. So why don't you touch real quick on that, the differences between the two?
It's very simple, Dan. A Roth TSP, identical to a Roth 401k plan.
Okay.
It's a retirement plan offered by an employer to employees. Roth TSP is offered by the federal government to its employees. Also, members of the Uniformed Services can put money into the Roth TSP. A private employer can offer a Roth 401k. On the other hand, a Roth IRA has to be established and funded by an individual. The individual has to go out and set up a Roth IRA with a bank, a brokerage, an insurance company.
Sure.
Everything is done on their own. Also, the contribution limits are entirely separate and different. The eligibility rules for putting money into a Roth IRA are different than the eligibility rules for putting money into a Roth 401 or a Roth TSP.
And I think that's where people get tripped up sometimes, because the Roth IRA was around quite a bit longer, and some of our Feds had the experience of reaching the point where they made too much money to be able to do a Roth. And I really do wish I had a nickel for the number of times that I've met a Fed and I'll bring up, have you considered Roth TSP? And the answer is, I make too much money.
I hear that. I hear that all the time in seminars, Dan. Oh, I can't put money into the Roth TSP. I can't put money into a Roth IRA. Therefore, I can't put money into the Roth TSP. Absolutely not true.
We're going to fix that.
Yes, we are.
We're going to spend the rest of our lives.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
So now for this, we're talking about traditional TSP versus Roth TSP. So why don't you hit the differences for our listeners?
Okay, the differences, Dan, between the traditional and Roth TSP begin with respect to how a TSP participant contributes to each account, and concludes as to how a TSP participant withdraws from each account. In other words, putting the money in and taking the money out. That's how they differ. Contributions to a traditional IRA are deducted from an employee's gross salary, resulting in current year tax savings. That's a key word, current year tax savings.
Current year tax savings.
And in many states, state income taxes. Not all states follow this, but most do. once contributed via payroll deduction, the employer's contributions in a traditional TSP accrue earnings, interest, dividends, capital gains, and the various funds available in the TSP, the C, S, I, F, and G funds, the life cycle funds, and then none of the earnings are taxed until when? Until when the traditional TSP, the contributions and earnings are withdrawn. When they are withdrawn, that's when everything is taxed in full, fully taxed.
Gotcha.
Okay. With the Roth TSP, contributions are made with after-tax dollars. Contributions are deducted from an employee's salary, which is first subject to federal and state income taxes.
Gotcha.
That means no current year savings. The Roth TSP participant has access to the same TSP funds and life cycle funds that the traditional TSP account participant has access to. The Roth TSP also accrues earnings, interest, dividends, capital gains. But here's the big difference, Dan. That when a Roth TSP participant is over age 59 and a half, and the Roth TSP funds are withdrawn, and also it has been at least 5 years since the Roth TSP participant made his or her first Roth TSP contribution, then if those conditions are fulfilled, then everything withdrawn from the Roth TSP account, we know the contributions are already taxed, but the key is here, Dan, that the accrued earnings are not taxed.
See, that's huge, I think. And so the other thing in this is, and you touched on it quickly, I want to come back over it again. You have access to the same funds as you do in traditional.
Yes.
So you're not giving anything up there. So what it's really boiling down to is, where are you going to feel the taxes? Are you going to feel them now, or are you going to feel them later? And again, this is my thought on it. When we're talking about a time late in life when maybe I can't even be doing any type of work, something that even gets me out of the house, to me, having a dollar that spends as a dollar seems like a pretty big advantage, and worth making a sacrifice today. What are your thoughts?
I agree. It's definitely knowing that money that I'm going to have, it's all mine. It's all mine, because example, Dan. I've had individuals in my office, and they're so proud. They say to me, I have $1 million in my traditional TSP account. And I say to them, no, you don't.
You have a partner.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So what are you talking about? Here's my statement. Look at my statement. I'm looking at it. $1 million. I see, but that's not all yours, because the person's in a 30% federal tax bracket, lives in Maryland, another 8%. So let's say we're going to say 62% of that money is yours, because 38% is going to the federal government, and then the other 8% is going to the state of Maryland, okay, before it's all yours.
Sure.
But if you showed me a $1 million Roth TSP account, that's all yours.
Mm-hmm. They were also contributing along the way. So when you got the tax break, that's where their money coming into the mix comes in. So that's why I say you kind of have a partner in this.
Pay me now or pay me later.
Exactly.
Okay.
One of the things that we say a lot is, and we have to spend a little bit of time and a couple of iterations to help people realize this, you can put more of your money into Roth than you can put into traditional, because the caps are the same. And when you go into traditional, you automatically have that partner in the contribution. So it's a great tool, and it's tremendously misunderstood. So now, see, here's the thing. Ed, as I've said in previous episodes, is the dean of the medical school here. I'm just a simple country doctor, like Bones from Star Trek. So, but the other part of that is Ed has a tax practice, which is incredibly valuable for his input here. So let's talk through what you touched on in the article about the conventional wisdom for why somebody might pick one or the other, and then we'll talk about your expert view.
Dan, the conventional wisdom is this: that if an individual's marginal tax bracket, we have to combine federal and state here, federal and state. Mm-hmm. If their marginal tax bracket is larger when they put the money, when they are contributing to a TSP account, compared to their combined marginal tax bracket when they withdraw the money, then the traditional TSP account would be more valuable. Mm-hmm. If, on the other hand, an individual's combined federal and marginal tax brackets are going to be more when an individual withdraws the money from a TSP account compared to when they contribute to the marginal tax brackets when they contribute to a TSP account, then the Roth TSP account is more valuable. So people say to me, what am I going to, I tell people, well, you just have to take out your crystal ball and tell me what your marginal tax bracket is, and I'll tell you what to do. Okay? We don't know.
Sure.
All we know is that federal tax rates are going to go back up. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, yes, it did lower individual tax rates, but only temporarily, because in 2026, they're going back up to what they were in 2017. As far as state is concerned, you may live in a state right now that has no state income tax.
Sure.
You may live in a state that has a low income tax, but then you're going to move to a state that has a much higher income tax.
Sure.
So that should also influence your decision as far as which TSP account is better for you.
That makes sense. Let me ask you this, and I don't think we've ever had a chance to really talk about this specifically, but let's say we're both over 30. Two old guys talking. Mm-hmm. I remember when IRAs first came in, and during that time, there were a lot more tax brackets than there are right now. They were much more narrow, and so I remember, because I opened one, and you'll be in a lower tax bracket later, and it made sense because I could see where you'd go up, and then there were so many brackets that you could actually come down. As these brackets have gotten wider, I think there's a whole lot more people living their work lives and their retirement lives within a bracket. What do you think?
I agree, Dan. When I got into this business in the 70s, I remember that in 1980, when Ronald Reagan took office, 1981, the highest marginal tax bracket was 80%.
I remember 80%. That.
80%.
I wasn't in it, but I remember.
Okay. Nor was I. But, IRAs were started in 1974. Mm-hmm. I remember those days you could put $1,500 in maximum, and the contributions were all deductible.
Yep.
And people loved it because they wanted that tax break.
Sure.
When Congress changed the rules in 1986, saying, well, you could contribute to a traditional IRA, but if you're covered by a pension plan, which all federal employees are,
right,
and your income is too high, you cannot deduct that contribution.
Very true.
A lot of federal employees decided, I'm not going to put money into an IRA. It's not worth it. Until 1998, when the Roth IRA started, where they got I could take the money out tax-free. So that the Roth IRA was popular. The only problem with the Roth IRA is there are income limitations for that too. Yep. That's where the Roth TSP will come into play. Awesome. Because you can contribute to the Roth TSP. No matter what your income level is, there are no income restrictions.
Yep.
So you could put into the Roth TSP this year, for example, the equivalent of what you could put into a Roth IRA, which, by the way, is $6,000 if you're under 50, $7,000 if you're over 50, mm-hmm, and that money can stay in the Roth TSP, again, grow tax-free, but there's only one problem. Only one problem with the Roth TSP, which I've come across. That is, like the traditional TSP, the Roth TSP, and this is unlike a Roth IRA, is subject to required minimum distributions when an individual turns 70. And I know I've run into a lot of people during seminars, they don't like that. So, well, what good is it then? If I got to take the money out, it's growing tax-free, I have the solution.
I'll bet you have an answer, Ed.
I have the answer.
Okay.
No matter what your income level is, you are always allowed to transfer your Roth TSP account to a rollover. I emphasize the word a rollover Roth IRA.
Yep.
Okay. And then once it hits the rollover Roth IRA, you don't have to take the money out because it's no longer inside a retirement plan like the Roth TSP. That's the solution.
Okay. And let's just reiterate one more thing here because you went through it succinctly, but fairly quickly. Let's go back to the restrictions on the withdrawals relative to the Roth, because there's a 5-year rule in there.
That is correct. With the Roth TSP, like the Roth IRA, by the way, has the same rule. Mm-hmm. In order to take money out of the Roth TSP and not have to pay tax on the earnings, mm-hmm, you never pay tax on the contributions when you take the money out because they were already taxed. And the TSP, by the way, keeps records of what your contributions were, the amount of your contributions. But in order to withdraw the earnings and not have to pay tax on them, you have to fulfill two requirements. One, you have to be at least age 59 and a half when the money comes out. Two, it must be at least 5 years since you made your very first Roth TSP contribution. It goes back to the very first year you made your Roth TSP contribution. Mm-hmm. When I say that, people are amazed. It only goes back to the first year. Actually, it goes back to January 1st of the first year. I was doing a seminar a couple of years ago in December. I think it was December 2017. It was my last seminar for the year. Mm-hmm. And where I was, they never heard of the Roth TSP. And they were simply amazed. They're so impressed. So you mean you only got to have it in there 5 years, not have to pay tax when you take the money out? Yeah, you're over 59 and a half. So I made a suggestion. How many more pay dates do you have left this year? Ooh. And they said, oh, we have one more pay date. So why don't you put $10 in there or put $1 in there?
Yeah.
They, why? What good is that? Well, get the 5-year meter running as of January 1st of this year. Go back all the way to January.
So there you go. Now, you had a couple of interesting points at the end of that article from some other considerations. And I think the big one, and if you just take a moment on that, this is not an all or nothing choice. It's not, I'm going to do one or the other, is it?
That is correct, Dan. This year in 2019, we still have time. We have at least four or five more pay dates left this year. An individual can contribute. A TSP participant can put a maximum $19,000 into their TSP account. Actually, another $6,000 if they're going to be at least age 50 as of December 31st. Mm-hmm. But that $19,000 or $25,000 can be a combination of Roth and traditional. It's not an all or none proposition. But I do want to point out that those employees who are covered by FERS.
Right.
It makes no difference which TSP account they contribute to. Traditional, Roth, only traditional. Their agency matching and the agency 1% of gross pay contribution will always be put in the traditional TSP account. Nothing will come from the agency to the Roth account.
Sorry, folks, no free lunch there. You're going to have to pay taxes on the free money from the agency. And you touched on, and you already hit this earlier, considering when funds will be needed, because you could run into penalties if you're not outside of that 5 years. Now, then the last one, I just love it because we don't hear it enough. We talk about it all the time here at Serving Those Who Serve. Would you talk about tax diversification?
Yes. Tax diversification is the following. It involves the following. Our tax code is not one or the other thing. We have lots of opportunities to save on taxes, believe it or not. We have deductions, we have credits, we have what also is called preferential tax rates. And the preferential tax rates involve long-term capital gains and qualified dividends. I always mention that employees should always consider how they can save on taxes both now and in the future. Saving on taxes it's not something we think about for the future. We got to think about it now. And with the traditional TSP, since the contributions are made before tax dollars, if the contributions are deducted from an employee's gross salary before federal and state taxes are taken out, that will result in an individual saving on taxes for the current year. With the Roth TSP, since money coming out is tax-free, assuming that the conditions are met, this way an individual will save on taxes in the future. But there's also another type of thing here called preferential tax rates that involve capital gains.
Sure.
An individual has long-term capital gains resulting from the sale of capital assets they've held at least 1 year. For example, a stock, a bond, a mutual fund, exchange traded fund. They've held this investment for at least 1 year, and they sell it at a gain. Mm-hmm. Then they will end up paying most likely a lower tax, pay tax on that gain at a lower rate than they will on their other income, such as pension income or interest income or rental income. The so-called preferential tax rates, believe it or not, start at 0%.
I like zero. Okay. I like it a lot.
They move to 15%. There's also 20%.
I like 15 better than 20.
Okay. So again, this only involves for long-term capital gains, also for qualified dividends paid from a stock or a stock mutual fund. So a combination of tax tax free, tax deferred, and tax preferential will result in individual being so-called diversified when it comes to taxes.
Couldn't agree with you more. Great points. Any closing thoughts for our feds out there?
This is a great time of year in terms of taxes to think about your contributions to the TSP. What will result in tax in your hopefully not paying a lot of taxes this year. Got to think about traditional TSP. But I advise people that if you got a nice refund last year and you're on target to get a nice refund this year, then the Roth TSP might be a good choice. Sure. Okay, because again, that money will be not taken out in the future, and you won't have to pay taxes on.
Great point. As always, Ed, you never disappoint. Coming back next month with us?
Yes, will. Yes,
absolutely. I will. Boy, I don't know how you do it, but I'm glad you've chosen to do it with us here at Serving Those Who Serve at FedLife. I want to do a quick shout out here. I want to say hey to Jackie and Nikki from the Furlough Cheesecake Company. Those of you who have seen us on Facebook, you saw they paid us a visit. They are awesome, and the cheesecake is to die for. Working really hard to get them on for a podcast. I think it'll be just fun to hear from them. So if you hear this, let them know that I want to come on. And that is a wrap for this episode. We are Serving Those Who Serve. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel, and remember to share it with friends, strangers, and even some enemies. Now, let's let the enemies in on this. Check us out on Twitter and LinkedIn. Don't forget our seminars every month around the DMV featuring the guru, Ed Zurndorfer, Ed Live. I keep saying this until you see it. It's an experience you don't want to miss. For more information, go to stwserve.com and click Seminars and Events. And be sure to read Ed every month in the Fed Zone, and that is at blog.stwserve.com. So for Ed, the crew at Serving Those Who Serve, and me, Dan Sipe, good luck, Godspeed, and above all, it's your Fed life. Make it a great one, because you deserve it. We are out.
Thank you for listening to the FedLife Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Serving Those Who Serve or Raymond James. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services.
Raymond James is not affiliated and does not endorse the opinions or services of any of the quoted professionals or their respective firms. Any opinions are those of Dan Sipe and not necessarily those of RJFS or Raymond James. This case study is for illustrative purposes only. Individual cases will vary. Raymond James is not affiliated with and does not endorse the opinions or services of the quoted professionals or their respective organizations.
Neither Raymond James Financial Services nor any Raymond James financial advisor renders advice on tax issues. These matters should be discussed with the appropriate professional. Investing involves risk, and you may incur a profit or loss regardless of strategy selected, including diversification and asset allocation.